Greetings everybody, I hope you're all doing very well. I wanted to make a sort of an updated version of a very good video I found about 10 or 12 days ago by Lucky Luciano. Excellent video. But there aren't really any recent guides to declone, nor any kind of walkthroughs of the specifics of the fights, and if you want to start killing declone yourself, how do you go about doing it, that kind of thing. So I'm gonna kind of go through as much as I can and as much as I know really about it, because over the last 10 or 12 days I really have delved quite deep into a lot of this stuff and game mechanics and stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that people think is a certain way and is not, and then there's other stuff that is right, and we'll learn how to abuse that, so to speak. So we're going to do it a bit backwards. I'll go through the gear and stats first, and then we'll go through some kill videos I did this morning, and then we will discuss, and it can be open-ended, so you can offer your opinion, obviously, if you wish. Got this morning for testing purposes. It's just a Stone Crusher, 2 sockets, ethereal. G-Face 3 open socket with 3 ohm for 12 max cold res, metal grid with ED, Phoenix 348 ED, Chains of Honor, double Ravens, that one's perfect, this one is not too far off. These bad boys, thank you 3 moth, 3 max cold res Hotspur, and 17 PDR Verdungos, and Soul Drainers with 36% ED. The charms we'll ignore for now for reasons I will explain later. You don't need to worry about it. Stats next. If I cast Fade, you see my res here. Yeah, you can just pause if you need to take a look at that. An important note here is 86% breakpoint. This is also kind of going to apply mostly to the Sin, obviously, but a lot of this will hold true for any class you want to try this with. You'll be looking for the same sort of stats anyway, no matter what you're playing. So let's get into the clips now. First thing I'm going to do is pause here. As soon as I go in, you'll notice I run is the first thing. Don't stop running for maybe half a second or a second or so after you go in, because you can get insta-lasered and die. And I've seen that happen to people that did it with me, maybe 3 or 4 times. So yeah, it happens very frequently. So the first thing you always want to do is just keep running. I prefer to go down into this corner that my mouse is hovering over. Buff inside, you'll notice I'm using a demon limb for the enchant, as I say. Buff inside because some... basically, as far as I understand it, buffs from items will disappear when you go in the portal, but other buffs, like from abilities, from your own skills, do not disappear, so you can pre-buff those. So that's the first thing to point out, is positioning. Run into this corner and we'll see why in a second. So we'll ignore that spirit for now. So yeah, first ability, Infamous Laser. Pretty self-explanatory, but it's actually worth talking about, because you can go, oh yeah, you take it for granted and you go, yeah, it's just a laser. But if you touch this thing, it will very likely kill you, near instantly. So just don't take the chance. On regular Diablo, you can kind of run through it or whatever if you're being a bit greedy. Don't. Just don't even bother. I mean, I'm sure you can, but don't. Just don't. Next ability, you'll notice from the left and right hand side of me, 2 white spirits have spawned. They're the same as the ones in CS, that those Doom Knights or whatever they are, Abyss Knights, I guess. Same ones that they spawn. They are homing. They will mostly aim for my Shadow Master, but if they're close enough, they'll aim for me. And at this point in the fight, one always spawns from the left and right. They are kind of nasty, and they're not too bad on their own, but they have this kind of horrible ability to have a knock-on effect, so that you're running away from the damn things, and then it causes you to run into something else, and you take a ton of damage and you just rip. So a major help for this is sitting, again, this positioning I've talked about, sitting in this corner here, because like in CS, if these things hit off a wall or any kind of terrain, they just disappear. However, when these ones disappear, they leave behind fire, and it's not actually fire to the best of my knowledge. It's all physical damage, I think. And it does an absolute truck ton of damage. So yeah, it's pretty bad. So but these spirits as well, when they hit you, they do a burst of damage when they actually make impact, and then the fire ticks, I think, is it every frame or something, for an insane amount of damage. So you don't have long to get out of it. If you do find yourself getting chased around by them, run into them, take the impact, and keep running. It does leave behind a fire pierce effect. You will need 50 over fire, your max fire res, for that reason, because it leaves behind like a debuff that lowers your fire res, I believe, for the rest of the fight. I haven't really checked it, but yeah, if you run into any other fire after you get hit by that thing, you're just dead. So you need 50 over max fire res, which ideally should be 95, to deal with those spirits effectively. Or else you just cheese it like this, which is much preferable. Brings us nicely to the third of the 5 abilities that kind of matter. First being the host, second being the spirits. Third is this Nova, Projectile Nova, I believe it's called, and it's all cold damage, and it's a lot of cold damage. It's something like 14,000 damage, and it's per bolt thing. You see, it's like a bunch of bolts. And they shotgun. So if you're against the wall like I am, 3 can hit the wall, and all of them can hit you, and you just explode. So it's terrific fun, and it's not dodgeable either, as far as I know, other than by something like a teleport or whatever. So basically, unless you're a Sork, you're going to have to tank this, and you need an appropriate amount of cold res to deal with it. Yeah, oh yes, and he does this at intervals. I don't know exactly what. I think it's something, around like 66% and 33%, or he'll start at 90, I guess, or 95% is the first wave. So he does it 3 times. The first time he does 4 novas, the next he does 5, and the next he does 6. But what happens is, because you're killing him so fast, if you're playing this build at least, is that as soon as he's done the first 4, he's already onto the next set, which is why you'll see he doesn't do any of the other abilities. He doesn't do Firestorm, and he doesn't do the hose aside from the very start, because he's busy spamming this shit, so it's kind of good in a way, but it does mean you have to be prepared with, like I said, the appropriate cold res gear. So that's number 3, and number 4 is Meteor. Again, a spell you're familiar with from Sork. There's one beside the boss. Never mind. There, right in front of the boss. Boom. Big explosion. It does hurt, even if you're at, I think it's like 30 or 40% or something physical. But there's a lot of physical in this fight, so any PDR is really, really valuable. It's a good percentage physical, and the rest is fire, and it does a good chunk of damage. But this is, there are 3 abilities that you don't want to mess with, and there's 2 that you can kind of greed and tank it a bit. And this is one of them. I choose to just tank the meteors, honestly. Unless I'm about to get wombo comboed by something else. Let's say a spirit is coming towards me, or the Nova's being cast at the same time, and I know it's all going to hit me at once, then I might dodge the meteor. But otherwise, you can just tank it. And then the last one is Firestorm. We didn't see it in this clip, but we will, I'm sure, later maybe. And it's just Druid Firestorm. It hurts a bit, and there is like a variable amount of damage it can do depending on how lucky or unlucky you get. So it's not a constant amount of damage, but it's not particularly high amounts of damage either, and it's fire damage to the best of my knowledge. So they're the major abilities you need to worry about. So I guess we'll go back into the gear with this in mind and see what the choices are all about. Alright, so we're going to go through gear in a little more detail this time. And so we'll see like the choices we made and why. I guess we'll start from the top. The weapon is kind of the crux of all of this. Is the reason I kind of wanted to make the video as well. And I could talk at length. I'm really good about the journey I've had trying to work out what's better and what's not. But I'll give you the TLDR. And that it's basically that this, on paper, mathematically, I worked it out as best I could, is better by about 5 to 10%. It should result in 5 to 10% time save in kills. However, in practice, this is better. So that's the that's the long and short of it. And this isn't even a good one, by the way. It's just a 2 open socket kind of heap of shit. Like, it's not even great. And it's still better than this thing. Also, something that's worth mentioning, your priority in terms of affixes when you're picking out a weapon, if you're trying to buy one, is actually sockets first, then ethereal, and then the ED. Seems kind of counterintuitive, but mathematically that actually works out the best, and that's because of what you put in it are pull runes. And pull runes gives you 75 ED and 100 attack rating versus demons per rune, which is a very significant DPS increase. So no matter what weapon you pick, you probably want to put pull runes in it. Another option is Eth runes. I toyed around with that. Eth runes work, but the fight gets kind of spicy towards the end, and that's when the damage really matters, because up until then the crushing blow is carrying the fight. But at the end you actually need raw damage, and that's why I chose the pull runes. The Eths help you go through the first part of the fight quicker, but pull runes pull through for you in the end. The major reason for picking Flesh Ripper is the minus 50% target defense. It's very strong. So Declone in PD2 has a lot less defense, so it's a lot less value, but it's still a very good option. And if you don't have anything better, this is more than good enough to get the job done. In fact, I wasn't even using an Eth1 until I think it was yesterday. I was using a perfect ED roll normal Flesh Ripper with 3 sockets. And it did absolutely fine. In fact, I didn't even really notice that big an upgrade when I used the Eth1. But I do notice a pretty big difference using this, and it's not even that great. That's the basic gist of it. I won't go on any further. Both are good, and I could talk for hours, so I won't. The G-Face, as I mentioned before, the hit recovery is actually pretty important, but the Crushing Blow, Deadly Strike, and 3 open sockets for Ohm are the reason you want it. Ohm, of course, for the projectile nova we talked about. Kind of pricey to build this. You know, the helm might be like 5 high runes, something like that. And the Ohm's 0.75 each, so it's not that cheap. But, you know, you can settle for a 2 open socket as well if you're on a budget, you know. Any metal grid, I see people using, not Saracen's Chance, High Lords for the crit. The 33%, what you call it, Deadly Strike. Don't really like it myself, because I feel like, especially when I'm using this with pull runes in it, like I want to be able to hit the boss at the very start of the fight. This has only minus 25% target defense, whereas this is minus 50. So he has more defense at the start of the fight, and that's why Metal Grid, I think anyway, is just a bit... It's just smoother. The attack speed as well does not appear to matter. I tested this fairly thoroughly myself, and I've read it several times. I have read other things saying that it does work and that IAS does actually affect the channel of Blade Fury, but it doesn't seem to. It does actually look like it, and it sounds like it, but it doesn't actually affect the amount of blades that are hitting the target. Is how I understand it. So anyway, Metal Grid is kind of, I think it's the best option, like hands down, but there are other options as well. I've been thinking about Saracen's Chance. I kind of want to try that. Phoenix, you can go for a Storm Shield for defense. Any PDR you get is very, very, very good. You get huge value out of PDR in staying alive. And if you're not playing a Sin, if you're playing a Paladin or something, the more PDR you get, like the longer you're going to stay in the fight, the more PDR you want, pretty much, because you're going to be inevitably going to be sitting in some shit or other that you're not supposed to be sitting in. And then you'll want that PDR, you know? So if I was playing a class that is going to sit in the fight for a bit longer, I probably wouldn't use a Phoenix. If I was trying to play it safe and like farm reliably, I'd probably use a Storm Shield. But if we're going for like quick kills to try and push the boss as quick as possible, Phoenix is the way to go, for sure. You just can't replace that sheer amount of ED. Like 348% multiplier is bonkers. Kind of the same thing for Chains of Honor. There are a couple of good options. Shaft Stop, I was actually looking at. 3 open socket, one of those. Kind of nice. Big PDR on it, and it gives you some life as well, based on, I think, character level maybe. Another option is GA, very popular option. Again, no problem with it. I quite like it. I did use it for a while. It just gives you max res and a huge amount of attack rating, and that's inevitably why I went with the Chains of Honor in the end, because I wanted the actual ED instead of the attack rating. I've got the metal grid for attack rating, and we'll get to this. This is the most important thing in the whole lot. Yeah, I just wanted the damage, really. 200% damage to demons. It's pretty strong. And it gives you the all res as well, and a little bit of PDR. So that's my choice, but Shaft Stop and Guardian Angel equally viable, and it's one might be slightly better than the other, but really do whatever you want. Verdungo's a couple of options here again. This is what I went with for the Vitality and the hit recovery, because you could also use a String of Ears, but I like the extra stats, more or less. The Hotspur are for the max fire res. You want to get to 95, definitely. Technically, you could go for Inferno Stride, and you would have to corrupt exactly 3 max fire res to get up to 95. You could do that, but then you're kind of essentially missing out on the corruption you would have gotten on a pair of Hotspurs, for example. And this is the best case scenario. This is the absolute best thing you can get for your feet. Is max cold res. They're probably worth a pretty penny. The Raven Frosts are, again, one of the major problems in the fight is that cold spam all day long. And so of the I have 90% cold damage reduction. And of that remaining percent, 20% of it gets absorbed by Raven Frosts, and it still does a ton of damage. So that's why we go with those. You probably could, I wouldn't advise it though, I would never swap off Dual Raven Frost, you know. You maybe could argue a Dwarf Star or something for the Fire Absorber or whatever, but I would just go with these. And then really just the centerpiece of the whole setup is, I don't know if there's any class that does physical damage that you wouldn't use these on. You absolutely need Soul Drainers. And I'll show you why very shortly. Only stat on this that matters, really, is the minus 200 to monster defense per hit. So like I said, the boss starts with about 2,600 defense, or at least according to some sources. I don't actually know, it's kind of hard to check. But let's say he does, and you've got minus, what is this, minus 25. So minus 12.5 from that is like 2,300 something, maybe, I don't know. So this then, if you hit the boss maybe 11, 12 times, which happens very quickly with Blade Fury, the boss is already down to 0 defense, and you're at max chance to hit, which is going to depend on your character level versus his level, and it seems he's level 110, so cap is going to be very close. If you're level 99, the cap is going to be very close to the actual hard cap of 95. So yeah, you're in good shape if you get his defense down to 0, and that's what these things are for. Interestingly, Stone Crusher does actually have that as well. It's got a minus 100, and there's also Two-Handed Sword that does it. I think it's minus 70 per hit. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, Soul Drainers, man, you can't really replace them. You have to have them. Get it. It's good. These ones are VD. The hit recovery again is very important because I found that the one thing that puts me in hit recovery quite a lot is the meteor. So you do want that high hit recovery to, get going again as soon as possible. Leech does not work on the boss, worth mentioning as well. So I've got 18 life leech, doesn't work, don't bother with it. So come prepared with like mana pots if you need as well, if you're playing like I don't know, a throw barb or something. Laying of Hands, I was like, oh my god, minus 23% target defense on him, 120%, 127% damage to demons. I'm like, oh my god, give it to me, I want to try it. And you'll find out in the next clip how that went. So now we'll jump back into the fights again, and we'll go back to the first clip. It's the same clip, except I'm going to let it play through. We're using the Flesh Ripper, the old setup, and we're using Soul Drainer. And fight lasts about 17 seconds, so it's somewhat quick. Nothing really to say, just as a baseline to compare the other clips to. The next one I swapped in the Laying of Hands I showed you with the minus 23 target defense. And I'll let it kind of speak for itself. It was about maybe 10 seconds in or so when I started to realize this boss is no longer losing health. Also, the laser did a ton of damage to me, but that can very easily kill you. I took a big risk by doing that, but anyway. So it's about here I'm like, normally the boss is, at 10% by now. Now I have to move, and now it's going to start getting messy. And then right there, that bit there is when I kind of realized, oh my god. When I sat here for like 4 seconds and nothing happened to the boss's health, I was like, uh-oh. This is a problem. So I'm already chunking through the rejuves at this point. I'm just, trying to finish him off. And then I realize I'm really running out of rejuves. So I swap in the Soul Drainers and I said, F the test. I just need to kill him. But I'm already after kind of going through everything already because I was quite careless. I didn't expect to have to go through all my pots. And we get a rip. So that is... an interesting one. I died my first 3 times doing this, and I've done it about 70 times since, and that was my first time dying since my first 3 attempts. That just gives you an idea. Yeah, I could have played it better for sure, but I wasn't expecting it to go that poorly. Long story short, don't use anything but Soul Drainers, and that's my evidence. Another thing worth mentioning as well, because it's happened to me twice actually, is that I have died in the fight, but because there's open wounds on Flesh Ripper, Declone actually died after I died, and then the portal opens back up. So here I'm just waiting. You see the puddle of blood on the ground? He's still bleeding, but he stops there, and I'm like, oh, he's not going to die. So just short, unfortunately, but test complete, so whatever. Next clip is with the Stone Crusher, using the same skills and everything. All of these were done using the same skills up until I think the next clip. Significantly shorter time. Yes, it's a sample size of 1, I'm very well aware. It's definitely not convincing evidence and not a large body of evidence, but I did notice it seemed much quicker. It was about 15 seconds. And here I went with different skills and it was another 2 seconds knocked off the time, closer to about 12 seconds. from the I count the seconds in terms of when I start DPSing after I've buffed and I've moved and everything, from when I actually start casting Blade Fury. So this was in the order of 12 seconds or so, which does seem, you could say 15 seconds, maybe variance, blah blah blah, but 12 seconds compared to 17 seconds, where both are just like standstill patchwork fights. That's got to be significant, right? Probably, maybe. And then the last one, I just added in some charms because I was... we'll go through it in a sec. So this was like the very next attempt. I just wanted to try it with some, like a random assortment of absolute junk charms. But even with junk charms, the difference was astonishing. So we'll go through the charm situation next. So that was closer to like 10 seconds or so. Alright, and the last thing on the list is to jump into the skills. It's kind of interesting, really. We'll just go with the Flesh Ripper build first. So what I had was Claw and Dagger Mastery, Fade, Shadow Master, Blade Fury, and the rest in Venom. And that was basically because I was told to do so again. And what I found was that Venom definitely not worth it. It looks a lot better on the damage sheet. It adds about 700 damage or something like that. But Declone has like, 95 poison res or something. And I just found that it didn't do anything. The points in Dagger Mastery were useful, obviously. Mainly for the AR. It's kind of basically the same as having an AR charm. Having a skiller for a shadow skiller. It's basically the same as having an AR charm. So that's what I did for that build, but when you're swapping to a Stone Crusher, you don't need the Dagger Mastery, and then I was like, well, Envenom does nothing, or Venom rather, and Claw and Dagger Mastery does nothing, so I might as well put the points in the synergies, and the difference was pretty significant, I would say. Just the length of the fight lasted, 2 or 3 seconds less, and 2 or 3 seconds doesn't sound like much, but if the whole fight only lasts like 12 seconds, that's a quarter. So it's a substantial chunk quicker. So I would advise going into the 2 synergies here. And you could, even if you're really greeding it, you could take a couple out of Shadow Master and finish off the remaining synergies, or just stop being lazy and level up. Yeah, so that's the build for that. And then for charms, I was using Shadow Skillers obviously for the Flesh Ripper build, and they're still quite good even just for Fade, because if you have a full set of 9 Skillers, Fade gives you another 5% PDR, which is nothing to sniff at, And so if I Fade up here, 32, so it was at 37%, and that's quite good, for Declone. So Shadow Skiller's not useless, but probably not optimal. The honest truth is, if I look at a Shadow Skiller here, or a Traps, and I look at my damage, it goes up by 10 and 12. So 10 to min, 12 to max. It doesn't seem like much, but that is actually quite a chunk when you have 9 skillers, and then you multiply it by like 1 billion from all the multipliers you have in your gear. That's a substantial chunk. So traps are decent, and the max AR charms made a huge difference. In that last clip you saw, that's when I equipped them, and the difference between that kill and the one prior was like about another 2 or 3 seconds. So these definitely work as well. As for what's better or whatever, this is all brand new to me because I only swapped. I did all of this morning with the Stone Crusher and the new charms. Like I got almost all of these from one person in Trade Channel this morning for like a goal. So they're not good. They're not min-maxed or anything like that. Where the old build, it's worth mentioning as well, by the way, the old build with the Flesh Ripper and everything was pretty much min-maxed. and it's still, you know, a good 5 to 7 seconds slower. So that's why I think the Stone Crusher is definitively quicker at killing, at least. Yeah, don't really know about the charms. Let me know. What do you think? I think these are probably the best, if I were to guess, or the max AR. But traps probably work as well. Who knows? So that's the gist of it. If you have any questions, definitely do post. This whole video is of me going, well, here's what I found. Don't know if it's right or wrong. Pretty sure some of it's right. Pretty sure some of it's wrong. And that's fine. The whole idea is just to open things up, and there's a lot of people, a lot of people I've talked to in the last week that are going, well, where do we find this? How do you know this? Blah, blah, blah. Make a video, etc. So I'm making the friggin' video. So the idea is then to open up like conversation as to like, what have you found? What is your evidence? That's the important bit, by the way. Bring evidence, don't just make a claim. Yeah, what's better, what's worse, blah blah blah. This is what I think is a nice compromise between safety and killing the boss in a very, very quick manner, because, you know, good offense and defense and all that shit. So the quicker you kill him, more likely you are to stay alive, as you saw in those clips. And the longer the fight drags out, you also have seen that. You've seen that go very wrong. So yeah, this is what I think is pretty good, pretty cookie cutter stuff. But like, soul drainers are definitely the MVP, you know. So let me know what you think. Do feel free to offer opinions and disagree if you must. Absolutely. I'd love to hear whatever you have to say. And y'all have a good day, and take care. Stay safe.